Guys, today I'm going to share my updated Titan build for 2025. Quite a few things have changed since the last time I made a build video covering my Titan setup, but I will cover those changes and kind of where my head's at when it comes to PvP for 6s, trials, and comp. I'm gonna get this out of the way though. This build is definitely a combination of something very powerful to use, but also refreshing, a little bit more fun, so that I can continue to enjoy playing my Titan and just Crucible in general. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about what inspired me to try a new build, why I wanted to change things up, and to be honest, it's the current meta. You see, Hunters have been pretty dominant, rocking like really close to 50% usage, and Void being just the most popular subclass to use. So there's kits in this character that have the invisibility, you have scatter grenades that do a bunch of damage, and then there's a smoke grenades, which is a throwable melee with a ton of different benefits and ways to use it when it comes to gameplay. Additionally, Warlocks have actually skyrocketed too in popularity. People are back on Dawnblade, a lot of Rift gameplay. So in this setup right now, top bracket games involve a lot of like 120 peak shooting gameplay. So sitting on a Rift, getting that HP back usually helps you make sure you win those duels. On top of that, the kit has really good movements such as the Icarus Dash. You have the Celestial Fire, which is something that I'm really jealous of as a Titan main, is just range melees. So with Celestial Fire being able to have nice tracking, scorching enemies to interrupt regens, revives, really good damage for 1v1s, you can see why Dawnblade, Warlocks, and Hunters are kind of the go-to characters when it comes to trials, at least. As of the time of this recording, Titans are the least used class, and the setup that I'm going to use is actually like the third most popular subclass for Titans. So it's not even the number one, but we'll get into that soon. So the question might be, what exactly happened to Titans that their popularity went down, and why is Void, a subclass that used to be the meta, not as popular anymore? Well, just a few things to cover here. Basically, Bubble got nerfed, right? So it's not a free super pop on the point to win anymore. While its rival, Will of Radiance, is still sitting as one of the best supers in the game for trials, Bubble is just not really hanging that well. We have some alternate options on the subclass like Twilight Arsenal, but without any really clear good movement, the super can tend to be quite inconsistent, with some of the tracking not really hitting, the animations kind of getting you killed. Twilight Arsenal is just kind of a 50-50 sometimes is what it feels like. But besides the super, they're still pretty solid, right? They are better than some of the other ones we still have in the game. So what exactly caused people to shift over from the Titan to something like Warlock or Hunter? Well, if you think about it, the only thing that Titans really had going for it besides the super was the constant barricade and overshield spam on Void. Over the years, the barricade has received several types of nerfs, like in the forms of damage of the shield and weapons doing more damage, especially if it's like a special weapon, it breaks the shield pretty fast. Grenades being able to chip the Titans through the shield, and that's not to mention all the additional nerfs that we're giving to the Bastion version of the shield, which is the one that you put down and it gives you and your teammates an overshield. Now, I will admit I was one of the many people that was very annoyed of the Bastion overshield, because at the time it just made gunfights, 1v1s especially, very unfair, as you're fighting people that just have more health than you. Well, the overshield health pool hasn't changed, other things have. You no longer get your shield as fast as you used to, and that shield itself also gets broken down almost immediately. I find it interesting because even though the overshield amount is still the same as before, it doesn't feel that way in this current sandbox. It almost seems like there's additional ways to damage people, and there's constantly more abilities that are breaking your health, so that overshield kind of just disappears instantly, especially in the face of a 120 hand cannon. That overshield is nothing. It's going to just chunk through that and your HP pretty drastically. While Regix might be in its nerf state currently, in the past it was the same thing. It would just tear through the shield, and basically the point is that it just doesn't really make a significant difference in the gameplay as of right now. Well, those are some of my few thoughts and feelings about the current meta and Sandbox and where Titans really are sitting at, but that's not really the purpose of the video. I wanted to give you basically the reasoning why I'm trying to find a new way to play my Titan that feels a little bit more competitive and still quite fun to use, because, you know, as someone that can play Hunter and Warlock, I need to try pretty hard on my Titan to not get jealous of some of these toolkits that the other characters have. So everything starts with a subclass, right? We're gonna take a look at the subclass. It's Void. For starters, the grenades. Even though scatter nades have been nerfed, it still seems like the go-to best option on Void, at least in my opinion, especially when paired with some of these aspects. You see, scatter nade does a lot of damage. It's a pretty fast grenade that you can throw out and it almost detonates instantly. In combination with controlled demolitionist, which is our first aspect that I'm covering here, this is going to apply volatile. Targets that are volatile appear much more visibly on the screen, right? It's much easier to just snap onto them and be like, oh, I see this guy, he's glowing purple, of course. But there's more to it than that. When I have this aspect, targets that are defeated while volatile are going to grant me and my teammates HP, which is pretty nice when it comes to survivability, especially in something like Trials of Osiris. That's not the best part. In this current meta right now, players like to peek shot a lot. There's a ton of disengaging, which means that people are leaving when they're pretty weak, or they're coming back with more HP thanks to a healing grenade, rift, warm husk, whatever it may be. This is where controlled demolitionist, the volatile debuff, is pretty clutch, because once you reach a certain threshold of damage, these players that are volatile are actually going to explode. They deal more damage to themselves, but also a little bit of AoE damage. This is key when it comes to a lot of peak shooting gunfight standoffs, because if they continue to challenge, eventually they're going to take a big chunk of damage, and that will result in a really nice pick for the squad. So keep that information about controlled demolitions in mind, because it applies to the rest of this subclass. Now, the real key to this build, the star of the show, if you may, is going to be the frisbee, the shield throw. So this has gone above in the past, and I believe it comes in the form of just better tracking. There's a lot of bounces to it. It seems like it now tracks, it'll hit multiple people is what I'm trying to say. While the frisbee can give you a little bit of overshield, that's not really the star here. I want to just make sure that you know it's a throwable melee. If you manage to get the right angles, whether you're hitting the floor, the wall, trying to bounce it around and ricochet it, you will eventually start hitting players really consistently. It takes a bit of practice, and I didn't believe in the vision at first because I thought it was a meme, but over time I realized, damn, it really is kind of a skill issue. Once you start to hit those trajectories, you almost will never not get a hit on a player. And some surprising things that I learned through my experience using the frisbee is that it does a lot of damage, so you can get some pretty easy cleanup kills. And because it's a bouncing ability, people do not expect this frisbee to ever come hit them around the corner, to be a heat-seeking missile. Even though they're in the air or trying to get some cover, that frisbee will find them, and they can't really do anything about it, even if they try to expect it. It took me a while to get a bit more confident playing aggressive with the frisbee, but it's definitely worth practicing, because when I go in for a shotgun kill, and if it might not actually get a one-shot kill, I can throw the frisbee directly at them, and it has enough tracking and speed to actually secure that kill before they punch you or do a celestial fire melee back. But honestly, I'm a big fan of this ability. The cooldowns are pretty nice, and that's what I'm going to try to lean into as I prepare the stats of the build. So with a frisbee, I almost feel like I'm on par to warlocks being able to throw celestial fire and apply scorch, but this one comes in the form of applying volatile, really good for damage, getting cleanup kills, but also if players are trying to peek, they're going to explode, take a lot of damage. More often than not, it kind of has the same effect as Scourge, where if I'm burning and I'm not fully regened, I don't want to peek, right? And volatile, if I'm a top bracket player, in my head, I'm going to think, hey, I don't actually want to challenge yet until this debuff is gone, because if I do and I take that threshold damage, I'm going to blow up and more than likely just die. With the frisbee talk out of the way, that kind of covers most of the important things on the subclass. So you can take a look here. I'm using the strafe list. Even in 2025, this is still the best jump ability on Titan in my honest opinion. I'm using the tall barricade, as that's usually the best option no matter what you're really doing. There has been some instances where the rally barricade is pretty solid for bolt charge, but that's a different topic for a different subclass. And then as for the supers, Twilight Arsenal, while still inconsistent at times, it's the best super in the subclass in my opinion, and it still yields a lot of kills. If it fails to give you a triple down, usually landing an axe on the feet or giving it to your teammates can result in, you pushing forward, 3-peeking and getting maybe another extra pick. As for the other aspect, I messed around with this a lot, and even though it does kind of nuke the cooldowns, there's a way around that. and a way around some of the negatives to running Bastion, the aspect that gives you an overshield but also applies overshield to your teammates. You see, there's something that I just cannot deny, and that's the fact that the overshield gives you extra HP, extra fluff to deal with ability spam inside of trials or anywhere in Crucible really. And here in this current sandbox, having that extra fluff, that extra HP goes a long way. And this is not even mentioning the additional health that you give your teammates, which is, it might be enough HP that helps them secure a pick when normally they will lose the gunfight. I'm aware many of you are not new to overshields and Bastion tie-in barricades, so this information is nothing too crazy, but I wanted to make sure we refresh people's minds that the overshield is still really clutch. With the aspects out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the fragments. For whatever reason, the way that I spec'd out this build and its focus on the frisbee took a lot of pressure off the fragments, where normally I felt like I needed to run the weakened fragment for my grenades to really feel like I had a really good build, but that's no longer the case. My focus here is going to be on some of the stats, health regeneration, a little bit of movement, and a little bit of intellect, and we'll get into that soon. Looking at the screen, I'm rocking Echo Obscurity for the recovery. I got Echo Expulsion, which is really good for the intellect bonus. Any ability kill will result in an explosion. We have Echo Leeching, so melee kills will result in health regen, but on top of that, I got the resilience stat bonus. Last but not least, it's going to be Echo of Dilation. I'm a big fan of this fragment. I love how fast you can move around when you're crouched. It feels pretty good. It makes it feel like you're running higher mobility than you actually are. But on top of that, you also have the mobility bonus and the intellect bonus, which is solid here. Since we're talking about stats, let's take a look at my tie-in. I'm running something a little bit odd. It definitely raised some eyebrows. Several people were questioning why I was running lower resilience than you would expect on a tie-in. As we covered earlier, the age of tie-in spamming barricades and overshields has changed, right? It's no longer there. So I felt like, since we're playing against mostly hunters and we're also becoming more popular as well alongside of them, the need or requirement, I should say, to running a barricade and spamming that every single second is not really there anymore. You get the same results that you would at max resilience just from being a little bit more cautious of when to pop your barricade and being more thoughtful. You know, do I really need a shield here? Is it time to give myself an overshield for me and my teammates? You won't really notice the difference if you start playing like that instead of thinking that you could just spam. Speaking of spamming, that's still something that is viable on this build, especially with the stats that I invested in. I'm always going to prioritize the recovery stat. And by the way, on this topic, yes, I know that the stats are going to change in the new expansion, so this is probably going to be the last build that I'll ever make when it comes to Crucible before the new changes go down. But even though that's happening, it's not going to stop me or you from messing around with different stuff in these months that we're waiting for the new expansion. So I'm going to prioritize on the max recovery so I can get my health regen. I'm going to have the tier 3 mobility, the tier 6 resilience. I don't feel like it's too low, and I'm at the threshold right there with some of the guns kind of need to land more headshots against me, so we're good right there. When it comes to the grenades, since I don't have the fragment that gives me -20, I could run tier 8, which is really solid, a lot more scatter nades that I'm used to. And unfortunately, right now in this current meta, intellect is still very, very important. I don't feel too comfortable sitting at tier 8 intellect, but it's solid because Twilight Arsenal has a nice cooldown. I normally would want to sit at tier 9, even max it out if possible, because the fast supers really come in clutch. Most players are running high intellect, and most players will have supers that you can get really fast, and usually that will end the game pretty fast if you don't have a counter. For example, Will of Radiance has been a really interesting obstacle for me when it comes to playing Trials of Osiris, and especially in the past when I've played comp. Those Will of Radiance being able to pop and feed orbs to the enemy team, they get their supers faster even though they weren't supposed to beat you. As for the last stat, probably the most important one here for me is going to be the strength. I never do this on my tie-in, especially not on my void. It's usually the stat that I ignore the most, but man, this is different. It feels really good to invest to tier 8. I would love to run more if I could, but the other stats are important as well. So tier 8 is really good. It's going to get our cooldowns down to 59 seconds, so that frisbee is going to be available pretty consistently, usually every round if you're playing it right. With that out of the way, let's talk about the exotic of choice, which is definitely kind of an OG one, a bit of an older exotic that you wouldn't expect for me to bring out into Trials of Osiris, but my goodness, is it good? And there's way more benefits that I saw as I kept playing with it, and I didn't really know about it at the start. So for starters, let's talk about empowering abilities, right? When you empower your abilities, you have faster cooldown. So that means that tier 8 grenade and melee are not exactly always tier 8. Those are coming back quicker, which means more ability spam. On top of that, empowering an ability also means you're increasing the damage of the grenade and the frisbee. So those abilities are now doing extra damage, and in some ways kind of unnerving the scatter nade. Not completely, but you get my point. One of the craziest things that I found out from playing the game is those extra hit points that the exotic tells you about for your barricade. Basically, that bastion shield that now would just get destroyed in a couple shots gets to live a little bit longer, and it's way more annoying for the enemy team to break through. I really like this build, and so far I hope that you find it interesting what I'm sharing with you, and that it's kind of made you want to rock it a little bit. The frisbee is really clutch, man. Let's go ahead and take a look at my mods here that I'm running on my Titan. Not much has changed as per usual, but I'm hoping that there's a bit of innovation here on the mod system for at least Crucible here in the new expansion that we're getting in the future. But on the helmet, I'm still running similar things like kinetic targeting mods that assist my primary weapon. Occasionally, I like to rock the airborne effectiveness mod, but it depends on the handling of my primary gun. As for the gauntlets, I actually made a bit of a change here. I'm opting out of reload mods. I'm not running reload mods anymore. I find that I don't need them. I value more running ability mods, but especially dexterity mods. So I'll run one for my primary in the form of like kinetic dexterity and maybe arc dexterity as well for something like a shotgun like Prophet of Doom. And then the last slots will be filled up by whatever mod that I want, typically fast ball. As for the chest piece, quite similar things. As always, nothing has changed. You already know you run the unflinching mods for your primary. And for the boots, quite similar things. The better already ability regeneration mods for your grenade, melee, barricade, whatever it may be. Personally, I run grenade and barricade here with the health regen mod. As for the class item, usually same thing as usual, double bomber and the reaper mod, so that whenever you cast a class ability, get a defeat, it results in an overpower. And as for the weapons, I've been a big fan of running the Ace of Spades recently. I like 140s a lot. Kind of staying away a bit from Rose gets a little bit repetitive for me, so things like Ace, Hawkmoon have been quite enjoyable. I did went ahead and craft the Prophet of Doom shotgun, which I didn't cover for a video because of the lack of special and 6s, but Prophet of Doom is a real deal, and I think it's worth it. But man, the grind is brutal. Good news is there's constantly new weapons being introduced, like the Inquisitor Slug shotgun, that might reduce the need of wanting to grind something like this. But this is a threat detector opening shot god roll, and it's amazing. I love pellet shotguns. Whether or not it's better than a slug shotgun is really up to you to decide. Personally, I think slugs are probably slightly better right now in this current meta, but I like using Prophet for fun. If I'm not using something like Hawkmoon Ace of Spades, I like to run the Criminal's Dagger, but you already know from playing the game that 120s are absolute machines right now. The peak shooting, the team shooting is at an all-time high, and I'm not sure if Bungie's going to change that, but we'll definitely cover it if it ever does, just like any really crazy sandbox changes for the Crucible. And with that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you like my build. I took a little bit more of a face-to-face, in-depth, deep dive look at my build, kind of just to get a chance to really chat with you, and I hope it was fun to sit here and listen and give you some nice content. Anyways, if you end up trying this Titan setup, if you end up throwing some frisbees, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.